What's the overarching emotion, the feelings? Because again, when we got to the start of March, it was all on course for a great season. Things didn't go away when the players came back from the Six Nations. So how do you review the season on reflection?
The Challenge Cup, I think the way we rotate the squad was great. Some of the boys have put in some really good performances, played some terrific rugby. I know it's in the second tier of the competition, but I thought we played a lot of young guys who come through that period, and at the end of the day to have 30 points I think is something that no one's ever done before. So I think that's testament to some of the young boys and how they played, getting the quarter final, and that was a real sort of low point. I think when you look at terms of stats, not that I'm a heavy stats man, is you look at it, the amount of possession, the amount of opportunities we've had a couple of rough calls during the game. I think we've done everything but win the game. I think we probably deserved to on the whole to win the game, but we had a couple of meltdowns, and I think we got a little bit frantic, and probably the back end we've obviously not got the game done. But I think all in all it was a decent competition for us, but again I think it's falling short at the wrong time. And then you go the Guinness. I think we've started off really well. I think the learning for us is probably the back end of the season was disappointing for us, the way we finished, because we were on course for a home semi, which was disappointing. But I think for us, there's probably the back end. You look at the small margins, the two derby defeats have probably hurt the most in around where probably we know we could have been a lot better. But again, I think there's a couple of issues in around that anyway. But then you go, there's fine margins in the sport. You go Ulster away at the start of the year, you lose in the last minute. You lose Munster at home with a couple of minutes to play. Leinster, you're a kick away for winning that game. So I think there's those fine margin moments in around where our season's gone. I think that could have helped us kick on. I don't go too far away, but all in all, it was disappointed to lose in the semi-final, albeit I think the development from last season to this season has been huge. I think it's, I suppose in a weird way, it's a positive that we're still disappointed that getting to a quarter-final and a semi-final is not the season we wanted.
I suppose it is only natural to beat yourself up given the way the season ended, but it is important, I suppose, to remember the positives of where we were last season to this season, and finishing 8th last year, getting to the playoffs this season, something we didn't do, qualifying for the Champions Cup by early April, again something we missed out on last season. So however you evaluate the season, there are clear signs of improvements from the year before.
You do beat yourself up. It is, I think, when you give yourself so much hope in around being in, like you say, after the Six Nations, where we come through that, I think we were around second in the league. We were going into a quarter final, and I think obviously losing some key players at the wrong time didn't help. But I think our defence has come on leaps and bounds over the season, and I think the development of some of our younger boys once again. I think the credit to the organisation, how these young boys keep coming through. You look at the likes of Keelan, and the amount of rugby he's played, probably a little bit too much in around the balance of looking after and developing people. You look at Ollie Cracknell again, another year down the line, Rory Thornton, Beardy, these boys are starting to grow. They're becoming senior figures for us at really young ages, which I think is testament to what the coaching staff and the development system do for this club.
You've touched on the young players, and I suppose when you look at reasons for the way the season sort of petered out as it did to a certain extent, you're looking at young players having to go to the well week in, week out because of what was an ever-lengthy injury list. And I suppose that the absence of some core players did have an impact, however people look at it.
Yeah, it definitely has an impact. We try not to use it as excuses, because at the end of the day, it's the people who wear the jersey that are going to make the difference on the day. I think we've lacked a bit of leadership, in particular that some of the senior guys you're missing. And yeah, just go back to the game in Treviso away. We were only 10-5 down. Were we playing great? No, we weren't, but it was still had enough to go and win the game and understand what little bits of pressure. And I think the pressure got to us a little bit, and the fact of sitting on the top of the table, we'd probably gone, I think, into we would have gone actually top if we'd beaten Treviso. I know Leinster were left to play, I think it was on that weekend, but I think that pressure, the group took it upon themselves. They wanted to win the game, and I think we went into individual battles to try and win the game instead of sticking to what we needed to be. Yeah, and I think probably the start of the year we were able to rotate the squad pretty well, keep it fresh, which we done the early part. The boys got on a good run, and then you bring in the likes of Alan Wynne, Bradley back. We could rotate some of those younger boys round, take Rory Thornton out, whereas the injury list started to grow, and we do lack a little bit of leadership at times. And then when we lose some senior guys, I think it does impact performance and impacts your ability to rest some of these young guys instead of probably like Rory and Keelan playing them week in, week out.
We talk about young players getting a lot of game time, and we talk about experienced players being absent, and sometimes when the outside selection can not be apparent and the reasons for selections, but of course that's down to the balancing act they have to make of balancing game time, the amount of time young players are playing on the pitch, players carrying injuries and niggles that they might not know about, and also ensuring that you have got some experience and some leadership on the field in areas where perhaps you might be short on experience if you didn't put certain people into the team. So it is always a balancing act.
Yeah, it's a huge balancing act, and you probably, when you lose a lot of centres and wingers like we've done throughout the year, and even particularly like playing Dan Evers on the wing every so often with Sammy, it's just what you've got at the time. You're looking at the injuries, the amount people are training. Sammy's had modified training, probably not far off. He probably shouldn't have played against the Blues and around where his groins were at and things, but in fairness, the kid pretty brave, played through it. But it's management and then seeing what guys are doing in working weeks, and again it's trying to balance off how many young guys are in the team, where we want that little bit of experience, where we think we may lose something in one area of the game but we might gain it in others. So yeah, we don't always get it right in certain aspects, but we know these boys inside out. We know what their training loads are, where they are mentally. We understand what's going on in they're outside of the environment, so that there's a hell of a lot to take into consideration in selection, and it could be the fact of people have played obscene amount of games. You've got to balance the NDCs off, you've got to balance young training age, training load, what they've been up to, so there is a huge conundrum in around selection. Do we always get it right? Probably not, but it's something that we it's no sort of stone unturned and turned with it, and it's pretty thorough.
To try and summarise and wrap up then, we've looked at the ups and downs of the season and some of the reasons what certain things happened of course the year, but highlights for you, high points of 2016-17?
Outcome is obviously getting to a semi-final. This doesn't make it any easier losing in another one, but I think that the high points of bringing guys through, I think obviously getting those 30 points in the Challenge Cup was really pleasing, and just seeing the development of a young group throughout it, going away from home, going into different environments, going to France, going to Lyon, seeing like obviously Keelan scoring a few tries out there, but I thought the defensive effort in Lyon was huge for us. I think even when we lost out in Ulster, I thought the performance was really, really good, and it's an understanding of where we get into. I think our defensive systems over the year, I think has grown. Just seeing a load of young kids come through again is obviously really, really pleasing. There's been development in some of our attack, and in particular the individual skills. I think put a lot of work there in last summer. I think it come through in particular up until sort of the March period, and still even the back end I think we scored some decent tries, but it's something that we've got to kick on from that and around our shape and how we attack the game. So it's something that there'll be improvements. I thought there was definitely improvements in individuals this year, so it's something now we just want to keep on kicking on and growing as a group. The LV period for me, seeing the young guys go up to Wasps, seeing how they come back against Bristol at the Brewery Field, how brave they were playing against a really senior Harlequins team down St Helens, and probably didn't get what they deserved in that game. So for me there's so many positives in around it. I think the growth of the not just the, we speak about Rory Thornton as if they're senior guys now, these are young men, but then the Luke Prices, the Keelans, the Beardies, those guys coming through, Jay Baker, I think is just a massive positive for us going forward. And then the exciting thing going forward is you see Owen Watkin, the Joe Thomases, there's more youthful nature to come through this group. So for me, probably up until the end of March, I think it was an outstanding season, and then the sort of nosedive we took at the back end is disappointing. But again, even in that sort of moment, we still could have knocked over Leinster and that thing. But ultimately, again, with semi-final is pleasing, but in the Osprey environment, that's still not where we actually want to be. In around our development and of our game, we've got to kick on. We've definitely got to look at one or two things where we can evolve. But I think we're pretty clear on where we want to go with that, and again, it's pretty exciting and probably after a couple of days, we're probably excited to get back into work and sort of get up and running for next year.
I find as a business, a positive was average crowds up, ticket sales up, good atmospheres at the Liberty Stadium, week in, week out, and really we want more of the same next year as we continue on this journey.
Yeah, look, I think our supporters are unbelievable. In fairness, I think it was one of the good moments was Grenoble away, where it was a tough day in around, a lot of hanging round, game called off, lack of preparation, but ultimately seeing Osprey fans there staying in, seeing them in the change rooms, I think was huge. And the boys and coaching staff have got huge admiration for our supporters when they travel, and in particular at home. Some of the nights we have at home, they do carry the boys through, and it's a great venue for us to play at. But our support, I got to be honest, is second, and then we really proud of our supporters, and hopefully we make our supporters proud.